Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you're at the right webinar. I got here late, but just on time. So this is the latest in the Suez. I suppose we're calling them Road to Recovery or deep dive webinars where we're focusing on a particular sector or a particular material stream. And this week we've picked the lucky topic of the organics industry. We've got 4 fantastic panelists, which is just about what you need to fill 55 minutes with content, ad hoc insight, and a little bit of banter. And if we get all that done in the 55 minutes and I get you all away on time, then I've done my job and you'll be happy. So we've got Nina Sweet representing WRAP with great insights. We've got Stuart Hayward High, my colleague, with equally great insights representing the waste and resources sector. We got Wendy Barrett from Devon County, one of my customers, thinking about the local authority perspective. And then, of course, I don't even need to introduce Charlie Truesdale from Here, There and Everywhere, but today representing the REA's Organic Recycling Division. So plenty of insight to come from them. We're going to do some quick presentations. We've got some poll questions. We've got your questions hopefully coming through to me. I'm looking up there, which means I'm grabbing some stuff from you to ask them. And that's probably all you need to know. Now, if you're a virgin of webinars, which I can't believe you are after 6 months of lockdown, then just look for the orange arrow somewhere in that top right-hand corner. That'll give you your desktop. In there, the things you need to worry about are the Q&A box, because that's how you get in touch with me. Any issues, anything you want to share, whether it's a question or a story, drop it in. I see it and I'll share it. And the only other thing you need to worry about is when we put a poll question up, and I think we've got 4 today, you just click on the button on the screen that's most relevant. That will enable you to vote. The only people that can't vote are the panel and myself. So we'll talk about the results of the polls and how we feel about them after you've voted. That's probably all you need to know. So today, organics. Are we talking collections? Are we talking reprocessing? Are we talking end market demand? Well, hopefully we're talking all of that and a load more, because I think the organic sector has got a huge opportunity in future over the next 3 or 4 years, but it's got some unbelievable obstacles to face. And we all know about some of those over the last 20 years, but I think there's a few more coming. So that's my setup for the 4 experts. First up, Wendy Barrett, Devon County Council. How are you, Wendy?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Adam. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm glad that you're in charge now. I can sit back for 5 minutes and you can tell us how you and the local authority space see organics going forward and what the issues and opportunities are.
Okay, cool. Thanks very much. Thanks, Adam, for asking me to give the local authority view. Last year in Devon, we collected and processed over 95,000 tonnes of organic waste, with the breakdown as shown on the slide. We work with 8 district councils, all of which collect garden waste, 7 of which charge for that service. The 8th collects mixed food and garden waste, which is sent for in-vessel composting. 6 of the district councils collect weekly food waste separately. The other 2 also have plans to introduce a separate weekly food waste collection in the next couple of years. This is all processed within the Southwest region at merchant facilities. We also compost organic street sweepings and have a number of community composting groups. Composting accounts for around half of our overall 56% recycling rate, as shown by the bar chart. Next slide, please. So what challenges do we face? We know that separate weekly food waste collections are in the draft Environment Bill and are likely to become statutory from 2023. We also know that government are considering introducing free garden waste collections. The logic behind this seems less clear with regard to waste prevention and the impact on home composting, and also quality of service users. Does it seem right that those without gardens contribute towards the cost of a service for those that are fortunate enough to have them? We know that contamination of the end product is giving cause for concern with regards to plastics being spread to land and leading to potentially fewer markets. We need to work together to clean up the end product. We can expect to see a lot more food waste requiring processing, both from domestic properties, but also commercial sources. Home working and the impact of COVID-19 has increased volumes of food waste in Devon by around 12%, and there's no sign of this reducing. We will need to deliver new facilities. We all know how difficult that can be. Getting resident participation is crucial to the success of any scheme, and so it has to be as easy and simple as possible. The food caddy liner debate continues. A compostable liner is needed for waste that is being processed in an in-vessel composting plant, but our AD operators prefer a plastic liner as it is easier to remove at the front end. Some of our districts now promote reusing an old plastic salad or bread bag to line the caddy, whereas others will not promote what they see as single-use plastic, and that's just in Devon. How will free garden and weekly food waste collections be funded? Government indicate that any new statutory duty will be funded through the new burdens, but it's unclear what this will actually look like. Next slide, please. So, what are our opportunities? Reduction in food waste has to be a priority for all of us, from farm to fork. The Committee for Climate Change recommended a reduction in avoidable food waste of 20% by 2025. Introducing separate weekly food waste collections in itself tends to reduce food waste, as residents start to realise exactly how much food they're throwing away. It's estimated that a household can save over £700 per year with avoided wasted food. Personally, I find that no matter how hard I try, mouldy bread rolls and Maggie salad leaves still end up in my compost bin or my food waste caddy. 3% of overall UK greenhouse gas emissions are estimated to be from biodegradable waste in landfill. Diverting organic waste away from landfill is key to reducing the emissions of greenhouse gases, with government looking to ban all food waste to landfill from 2030. Processing garden or food waste separately is considerably cheaper than gate fees for managing it as part of the residual waste stream through energy from waste or landfill, although of course there are collection costs to be factored in. In Devon, we have a shared savings scheme in place where a district council gets to share 50% of any savings that they generate for us by them introducing new services, which helps to reduce our disposal treatment costs. And of course, there's the promise of some government funding. Next slide, please. Looking forward, we need clarity from government on what we are required to do and certainty in terms of timescale. This may be forthcoming in the next round of consultations on consistency. This is critical for future investment by the industry. We also require clarity from the Environment Agency on permit requirements and consistency on regulation. We need collaboration across the whole organic sector and to understand our respective roles better. We all have a part to play, and we need to understand our respective strengths and limitations. Put simply, we just need to talk more. We need to understand how much additional capacity is required and plan for this now. New facilities will take time to deliver, and a new infrastructure planning timescales, 2023, is really not that far away. Crucially, we need effective engagement with our residents such that they engage and participate. Approximately 30% of the residual waste collected in Devon is organic waste, and yet we do have separate organic waste collection schemes in place. Why are they not being used? Is it the yuck factor, or is it something else? We need less contamination and better understanding. Green waste does not mean placing a green motorcycle helmet in your mixed food and garden waste collection. That's just one example we've had delivered to an universal composting plant. Finally, we need a meaningful discussion with government as to how all that is required is going to be funded. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Wendy. You're right. Anything green is game for a laugh when it comes to a green collection, isn't it? Yeah, we could talk for hours about what's the most obscene thing you've seen in your stream. Fascinating. I mean, I am ex-local government some time ago, of course, and we work closely with so many authorities these days. I mean, do you think there's enough? I mean, you've asked for clarity from government, and I think our other speakers will probably want to touch on that point. But I mean, what's your one ask of government? If tomorrow they could give you the world, what would it look like?
It would be just that, Adam. It would be clarity on what they actually want us to do. I mean, this the suggestion of a free garden waste collection. If they want us to do that, it needs to be funded. And that's our concern, really. Local authorities are content to do what we're required to do, but we need the funding to be able to do that, and that's a real issue for us.
Okay, and you raised the point eloquently about the yuck factor, which I'm old enough to remember when that was first being coined, I think, for organic collections. But do you? I mean, Devon's always been at the forefront of behaviour change, communications and engagement. I mean, the first time I came down there was 25 years ago to do some door-to-door engagement, and I've always thought your campaigning as a county has been excellent, even if you've got different collection regimes in place. If you don't know why the residents don't participate properly, then will anybody know? And if so, how do we close that gap on appreciation?
I think we just need more engagement with the residents, and we need some honesty perhaps in terms of why they're not engaging, because when we go out on road shows, everyone tells us how well they're doing, and yet when we actually look in the residual waste, we see all this material that could have actually gone into dry curb recycling or into the organic waste collection. So it's just, I think probably every individual recognising what they do and don't do.
It's a fair point, very fair point. Thank you for kicking us off. Plenty of positive messages, but plenty of concern too. So let's where are we going? I'm going to run down the list. I think Nina is the, given we're asking policy, are you the next obvious person to step into the into the fray and sort of give us a bit of a, how do you see the future looking, and what that policy evolution might look like? I mean, that's almost as if we planned it.
Thank you, Adam. To answer your first question then, no, I'm not. I'm sorry, RAP isn't a policy-making organisation, and you knew that answer was coming, didn't you?
I had to try.
You had a good go. Thank you very much. Predicting the future, you need a crystal ball. I don't know about you, Wendy. I don't have one. Not this week, not next week. Maybe it's on Amazon. What's going to come to us over the next 6 months, 12 months? It is certainly more consultation. Obviously, things have been delayed because of this really weird year that we've been living through. But DEFRA are preparing for extra rounds of consultation that will come to us in the new year and over the next 6 to 12 months. And I think that's really our opportunity to make the case that we need, to provide the evidence that we've got, and make it very clear to DEFRA and other government departments, to be frank, that we do need clarity in this area. We need surety. You as a local authority need to know what those levels of investment are going to be. You need to know what the full outcome of funding is going to be. So those are our opportunities, Adam, to take it forwards. We couldn't have predicted the last 6 months, and I'm not going to have a go at predicting the next 6. Sorry.
Do you want the
Where
next
does that
slide?
leave us, Adam? Shall I carry on with slides?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. For what I'd like just to run through here is perhaps what we're trying to do in that interim. Where we are with the organics process at the moment is we have a thriving organics industry. We've got representatives in front of us here and now. What we've been asked to do by DEFRA, though, is to recognise that what we have is a mature industry, but an industry which does have some issues around its operation and the curation of the outputs that we're using now in agriculture. As you've mentioned yourself, Wendy, that the sector is really, really important for us achieving recycling rates across the country. Yours in Devon are very, very impressive. They're mixed around the country, but are always food and garden waste is a huge proportion of what we need to recycle. The issues that we've got, though, are mounting up, and I think it's none of us here will say that the picture that we've got is absolutely perfect. And picking up on a point you made, Wendy, we do need to collectively address these, talk to each other and those issues to keep the sector viable. So if we skip on to the next one. We go to the next slide. Is that me? Our issues: quality. We have to have quality inputs, quality operation, and quality outputs. If we can't do that, this industry will fail, quite frankly. By quality inputs, we need to address the issues that Wendy's already raised. Don't put green things in your green bin. Let's sort out what we're doing with liners. Let's reduce the amount of plastic which is ending up on our soils. I'm sure we all saw or watched the new Attenborough programme on Sunday. Biodiversity in soils is equally important. The stuff that we can't see is as important as the stuff that we can see. Let's have some landmark totem animals to support, but let's not forget our leafhoppers, our soil microbiology. As well as quality, we have quality in the air. And I think the quality in the soil, quality in the air, we cannot ignore the potential threat of ammonia pollution from the spreading of digestate. It's increasingly recognised as a health issue, increasingly recognised as an important factor in our ability as a country to meet our air quality emissions standards and directives. That will be post-Brexit as important as it is now pre-Brexit. We do seem to continue to produce in this industry a range of low-value products. I'm sure, Charlie, you will talk later about the value of compost in terms of economics. It's a highly valuable thing in terms of what it does, but do we pay the full value for it? And digestate we're using as a very, very good fertilizer, but because of what it is, it will never be a high value product because it's a watered product generally in the UK. Because of all those issues, I think the industry as a whole is very much under a great deal of regulatory scrutiny, and others will talk here, others apart from me will talk about the numbers of consultations that our environmental regulators are putting on the table right now, which is critical to how we operate in this sector going forwards. And lastly, the land bank availability. Nitrogen in the in agricultural land needs to be controlled. Phosphorus needs to be controlled. The use of organic materials needs to be controlled. If you're in a place where there's several different sources of all those things wanting to get to land, you will suffer some pinch points. We have plenty of land, but we don't always have it in the right place. So moving on to the next one. What we're going to try and do is to try to pull us all together and into a place where we can all talk to each other, where we can formulate positive steps to improve the quality of inputs and outputs, find our ways to reduce ammonia emissions which are workable, doable and achievable, and look to where we can find an increase in the value of compost and digestate so that we can fully appreciate the ecosystem services that those materials can offer to us. And if we can do that, we'll maintain recycling rates. A roadmap is a lovely title. What it means is a series of actions that we can all sign up to. This won't be RAP doing this will be everybody around that table. So ourselves and regulators and operators and trade bodies, farmers' unions, those involved in agriculture, local authorities, the whole selection of people who are involved in trying to make sure that we find solutions to all those issues. And the next one. We will collate it. We'll do the job that RAP usually does in terms of trying to bring people together, and we'll produce the drafts. But it really is around that wider group to identify where they can act and what they can do. Our output will be a guidance document, a roadmap that identifies the actions and the timelines that we need to try to achieve. I feel in my head that it will go through a series of iterations. I don't think anybody's going to get this right first time. And at this stage, I don't think we should be constrained either. I think it should be a wide-ranging document that should look okay in the next 6 months, the next year, but out into the future as well. And the next one, these are quite quick slides. Our timeline for it is we're working now. Some of us on this call will meet next week. Hopefully with some just suggestions of what they can bring to the table and what we can fit into our roadmap. We're aiming to publish something in the early part of the new year. We're talking about February time there, certainly before the end of the financial year. So we hope to have something that we can talk to wider audiences outside the current working group towards the end of this year. So I will look forward to talking to many of you over the next 6 months about what we can do in this space to achieve success for this industry going forward. And hopefully, Adam, that starts to answer your original question. Does it fit into policy? I hope so.
You've certainly taken me a long way down that road, Nina, so thank you. And I hadn't seen your slides in advance, so yes, you did answer some of those questions for me. And you're right to chastise me for even asking you to talk about policy, because I do know that that's not the domain of RAP. But I'm interested, is the organics roadmap a reinvention of something previously, or is it more plastic pack for organics, or is it going to be its own entity with its own scope?
I think it's a mix of the two, Adam. We've done roadmaps previously, but I think the key to success for this is everybody signs up to it. Nobody owns all those issues. Nobody will own all of the actions, but everybody can do something. So I think it's go on.
No, after you.
No, you're fine.
Well, I've got one question. It's slightly loaded, so I won't tell you who it's from, but this is an opportunity for you if you want to take it. So RAP used to have a large organics team which was delivering real market development. It didn't last, austerity, etc. Is this the time and the place to bring back a strong market development orientated RAP organics team?
There you go.
Pass.
I can't answer that. You need to ask my directors and my CEO that one.
I might
enough.
ask the other.
Answer
I might ask the other panelists.
You could do,
Wendy,
yeah,
would you welcome a stronger RAP Organics team to enter the fray in the near future?
I think we'd all welcome that, Adam, wouldn't we? But recognising the limitations that Nina's under.
There we go. We'll take that as a positive. Cool. I'm going to park the other question because it's something that you can all get involved in. Thank you, Nina. Perfect to set us on a direction of travel. That now leads us over to the man with the crystal ball, Charlie. We've done a couple of these this summer, you and I, talking about stuff from behaviour change to quality end markets. It's good to see you in your log cabin. Are you keeping well?
I'm very well, yeah. And I thought I'd better not put the extra bright shirt on today. I thought I'd be vaguely civilised, as opposed to the full Indonesian one.
So tell me, Charlie, in your next 5 or 6 minutes, how is the REA looking at the future of the organics market sector, and what can we do together to ensure success over that duration?
Well, lots within REA, and I guess as always I have to clarify, because whilst I will talk a lot that's definitely REA policy, there may be a few things that are perhaps more of a Charlie view than an REA view. However, I'm very pleased that both Wendy and Nina have also been saying what I wanted to say too, which is great. So I'm not going to be too controversial, but I kind of thought, why do we do what we do? And I just want to remind us all, like, first principle is why are we diverting organics from landfill? But what really matters to me is producing quality organic material that can be free from plastic and other contaminants and offer a genuine benefit in building soil organic matter and reducing chemical fertilizer use. It's kind of what both Wendy and Nina said in a way. And I think it's really critical how we look at collecting, processing and distributing these organic products. We need to be much better and more energy efficient how we do this. That's why, where possible, of course, getting gas out as part of the process makes sense. So to look at some numbers, household organic waste, green and food waste data flow confirms that there's 6 million tonnes across the United Kingdom. And that's pretty static, you know, stuff grows. People might have smaller gardens, but we're still doing more or less 6 million. And when I say across the UK, I mean the whole of the United Kingdom. Food waste from households is unclear, and Nina and I have talked about this a lot over the years. Many assumptions have been made, but there is broad consensus that once collections are rolled out, it drops down to around about 1.5 kilos per household per week. And it doesn't matter whether it's weekly or fortnightly. Now, I will qualify that because what we've seen is, as a result of COVID, household food waste, where it's collected, has gone up maybe by about 20%. And as an aside, talking to some of my colleagues in the AD world, what they've seen is a change in compositional analysis of that. So far more vegetable peelings, they're not chucking out big loaves of bread and stuff that would give energy. So gas yield has actually dropped per tonne. So that's interesting. And again, to credit Nina and RAP and others have been instrumental in reducing food waste across the field value chain. And there's a critical thing, and often we forget that, how much we've already done, and there's a lot more to be done. But food waste, we shouldn't waste it. There will always be a certain amount of unavoidable food waste, but it's critical to remember it's better. And I think Wendy had said this, that in terms of reducing adverse climate change, reducing food waste is one of the critical things you can do. So jumping back to household data, I think it's critical we remember 6 million tonnes of green, but actually only 2 million tonnes of food. I qualify that only 2 million tonnes of food on the basis we're providing some form of collection system, because as Wendy, you said, and Nina, want to roll out, people do reduce their food waste. And on that, I would also say, why have we focused so much on AD when there's only 2 million tonnes of food? And I think we know the answer to that. It's financial. And I've said, without upsetting too many of my AD colleagues, it's a bit of a bun fight at the moment, because there's a real drive. Sorry, that's a bit of a pun, wasn't it? I didn't mean that. There's a drive to get food waste to those AD plants. There's lots of other organic waste, and we're not even talking about industrial waste, but certainly that's a possible thing. And I'm not talking about farm AD, but on pure food waste, whether it's from households or food businesses, food processing factories, etc. I think, looking at the data, in reality, from UK PLC, looking at domestic households and businesses, restaurants, cafes, etc., realistically, it's probably only about 4 million tonnes. I think, again, Wendy, you mentioned about home composting. I'm a keen gardener. I still like watching Monty Don, even though I know almost as much as he does. He's been great talking about home composting, encouraging those who don't know how to do it. And we've seen, again, perhaps got some data there, there has been an increase in home composting. So that's good. I'm conscious to not take too long, but money is important. Compliance, distortion in the market. We've forgotten about some of those. Nina, you mentioned about the regulator, but the reason the AD has unintentionally distorted the market is the subsidies for generating gas. But they're going to come to an end, and the real cost of AD will become apparent. Now, actually, when I talk to colleagues in the AD sector, without any form of subsidy, you need at least £60 per tonne. And that's scary for local authority points where we're all used to having free waste well, you know what I mean, low cost. We have to change that bit. And to go back to Nina's point again on compliance, the regulator is taking a very tough approach to the whole biowaste sector, increasing its enforcement of rules, and appears likely to be imposing tighter limits on the output, as indeed with QP in Scotland. And the primary focus at the moment is on installation. I presume most people know what I talk about in the installation site. So BAT and BREF, we've got until the 16th of August 2022 to be fully compliant. Probably relatively few of us have actually got there at the moment. We're all working hard, but that's a big increase in cost. And the agency quite rightly is focusing on inputs. I said earlier about rubbish in, rubbish out. We all know how difficult it is to get the general public, but it can be done. We have to focus more on that. So it's a big wake-up call for us. Compliance is going to cost. Our industry can provide fantastic value and can do a fantastic job. Many of us are already doing a fantastic job. I think we all reckon we could do a little bit better. We have to focus on soil. That's got to be, in my view, the primary objective: get better outputs for improving soil along with generating biogas. So, what does the future look like? I think the COVID crisis highlighted that green waste collections were badly affected. I know, Wendy, you're rightly saying from a local authority perspective, gosh, it's quite scary. You might have to pay for these costs if government rolls out green waste. But I would argue, with 87% of UK households having a garden, I've already proven we've got 6 million tonnes of green, only 2 million tonnes of food from the domestic sector. So actually, surely we should do that, and maybe we reclassify it so it becomes priority waste, and perhaps we say, if we do it commingled, if we went to dry AD, if we gradually phase out IVC open air windrow, that's my radical Charlie point here. Actually, the energy you can get through a dry AD is significant, enough to power 6 terawatt hours. That's 500,000 homes. That's a radical shift. Local authorities, perhaps you have a household that gets one free bin, collect it fortnightly. That's cheaper, better environmentally. Going to dry AD be fantastic. If you've got a garden big enough to generate more than one green waste bin, pay for it. So that's a big picture, I think. To get to a summary, because otherwise I'll be told off. In my views, appreciate food waste must continue to reduce. There's always going to be some, but reduction is key, and we forget that at our peril. You know, we rolled out lots of AD plants. We thought there was unlimited food. That's crazy environmentally. And the most critical aspect, as I said already, we've got to get that quality. Nina said that the RAP roadmap, we've got to get quality. You know, Dave Dunn, everybody's talking about use contaminants in the soil. Soil is a fantastic ecosystem. It doesn't want plastic, it doesn't want microplastics. And as a 5-year-old said, don't put plastic in if you don't want it at the other end. We can do lots of technological things to remove it, but we can't get it all out. Look at the whole system. You know, look at cradle to cradle policies. Look at how we collect. How do we collect from each individual household? How do we make sure it's done efficiently in the processing plant? How do we put that great product back to land? And again, how do we fund it? I've said very clearly, and every AD operator will tell you, if they get no subsidy, we need 60 quid a tonne. Is that a local authority going to pay for it? Will government put some incentive into soil carbon, into an element of gas production? How is that going to be funded? You know, we're not charities. We need to earn money. We need to make a profit. Regulation is tighter. It will get tighter still. That's probably good. if we get a level playing field, we want equal enforcement across the whole of the country. Nobody can be undercut by somebody doing a, dare I say it, a dodgy job. We all want to do a great job. That costs. And I think finally, on a slightly lighter note, as Adam accidentally flicked too quickly, but to go to the next slide, you know, most of us can do that. We can go naked. That's an example of how to go naked. Just a few peelings on top of your green waste, dead easy. It doesn't need a plastic bag. The vegetable peelings are perfectly happy on their own. They don't need to be wrapped. And as one of the people who lives in our village, because we're lucky to have a Coleman collection, says, they have a plastic bag in their kitchen, and then they go out to their bin, shake it all out, keep the plastic bag in the kitchen. Plastic doesn't go in the compost. On that note, because I've probably overshot my time allowance as usual. Thank you.
Cheers, Charlie. That was just everything, wasn't it? I mean, you've covered the kitchen sink and the compost bin as well in that. That was fantastic, mate. I'm conscious of time, but question about 5% of the dry mass of compost is sequestered as soil organic carbon. So what policy mechanisms should we be looking at to encourage farmers to use the quality compost and thus increase the value of the compost? Any initial thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think many farmers, and again, I should reiterate that many of our colleagues in this do a great job and are able to sell compost. They produce good quality compost, and farmers want it. They see the value on that. They're not helped by, dare I say, the general public, probably through a lack of education, not doing it. You know, we all spend a fortune cleaning it up, so we get it clean at the front end. Why I keep going on about that. But yeah, I think maybe that's where a government incentive on soil organic matter. I mean, that's what you want from a, as I say, somebody my early career was in horticulture and agriculture, and soil organic matter is key. Looking after the soil is absolutely key. Putting this kind of material builds the humus, improves ion exchange capacity of the soil for those soil scientists amongst us. All that kind of stuff is key. So there is a real value in it.
Okay.
How you that's not, you know, maybe Nina or somebody else comes up with how on earth we fund that, or a kind of DEFRA. It's complex, but
don't pass Nina a hospital pass. That's my job.
Stuart will come up with that answer.
Final question, Charlie. A quick one. I mean, that was a pull factor in terms of the markets, and when you started talking about nudge factors and residents getting it right, and clearly Monty Don, you know, good friend of the family of yours by the sounds of it, is he the man to drive, you know, your children and their children to do home composting? I'm not sure he's the face of the organic sector. No, any ideas on the influences that we need?
I think that is, and I have actually sort of mooted that before. I think it is actually a good idea, because it's amazing how many, it's like Countryfile, it's amazing how many people who watch Countryfile and Garden's World. So those kind of programs are quite good in terms of educational side of things. And I think to go back to that, you know, many of us talk to people who are very keen on this, but they don't get any information. I mean, how many of us have actually seen anything from our local authorities about what you should do and how to do it? You know, we used to get that a lot. That can be improved, and social media. Maybe you ought to go on TikTok. I feel one of those very old. I've heard of it. I don't know what it means.
You can't say TikTok on live. That's not allowed. Conscious of time, you talked about systemic change. I can only think of one person when we talk systemic change, and that's Stuart. Stuart, thanks for waiting. You've been very silent, which is good of you. What's cooking in Suez world, and how do you see the systemic change and the roadmap and the demands of local government around organics? I'm sure you've been crystal ball gazing.
Well, it's funny because obviously Nina brought that, and as you know, as you joined Suez now, that as a Suez senior executive, you are given a crystal ball. So we do occasionally consult that crystal ball. I have a Suez logo on that one to make sure that it only gives me predictions for Suez. Afternoon, Adam. So thank you for that. I'm going to take. I saw Charlie, and Charlie had a little chat with me before, and he was angsting about, you know, I'm chair of this, and you know, I can't upset my members, and I thought, okay, well, let me have a go. And I looked at this. If you step back and say, actually, you know, we started composting, we started collecting green waste, we started collecting food waste for many reasons, but one of them was driven, for those who are old enough, through landfill avoidance. And in many ways, we treat organics in the waste management way. And it's quite funny because actually in the world of sustainability, circular economy, net gain, biodiversity, etc., we should stop looking at it that way and do it a different way. So I'd approach it in that approach. So I'm going to throw balls around. So organic waste are more than landfill diversion. I think we've done the landfill diversion bit. What we've got to go is what do they give to us as society? So the person, we want to collect them, we want to put them back on the land, we want to improve soil quality, we want to replace fossil nutrients and minerals, we want to create something that's more renewable. And it's hard to point to anything that we have at the moment in our control that's more renewable than putting food back to grow food and compost back to grow crops and food. So to that degree, we've kind of got it the wrong way around, and we have to rejig it. And I probably challenge Charlie and say, actually, it's nothing to do with DEFRA. It's all to do with bays, because this is about valuing natural resources. This is just a resource that we have as a country that we have to value. DEFRA have a very important role in making sure we achieve targets and that we do it in a proper way and we regulate it correctly, etc. But actually, the value of the product is a bigger bays question. So I'd say actually it's more of a bays question. So next slide for me, please. I'll wait for that stutter. Next slide. Oh, there we go. Jolly good. And just to counter, because I saw that lovely photo of Charlie's naked food bin, and I thought I'd maybe pepper that with a bit of reality. So to your left is a high GDP suburban environments view on what's waste. And I must say, for me, I've probably got about 15 salads worth of salad potatoes there that I would have eaten and not thrown away. So again, that's, it's perception of what's waste and what's not waste. In the middle is the outcome of us trying to take contamination at the front end. So we end up with with what was contamination to organic, now other materials, plastics and other materials contaminated by the food waste. Not pleasant in that sense. And in the same way I've said that compost is not about landfill diversion. Well, organic waste are more than just fueling AD. AD is a way of getting one value out of it, but it's not the whole way. And if I look at proposals for CCS and a CFD for CCS, we start to see that the government's valuing the contribution to climate change reduction. And I see actually no reason why, as part of maybe our sector being brought into UK ETS, that we wouldn't value the commodity, not only the dry matter, but also some of the other nutrients that avoid fossil equivalents in that process. And we value biodiversity and natural capital in the same way. So there's very much, and we have to look at these things differently. And we should make the best value out of it. We should get the maximum amount of energy out of it. I have no question at all. But that's, to me, the cream on the cake. The cake is this organic material that will go into growing new food. Stop using fossil materials to grow new food, and really get back to that kind of organic circular economy that we know we need to deliver that process. I was just about to try and switch the on switch, and I can't do that. So next slide for me, please. But one of the things that almost everybody said through the process, there's a big delay to these other slides, aren't there, is local authority. And local authorities are doing a great job. They're really good at controlling quality. But one of the proposals is to require mandatory food waste for business. And on your left is a food-only business collection. And those of you with very good eyes will see in there, there's a few things in there that you could struggle to call food, including a 1 metre section of 2x4 in that process, and a tyre. So if we expand food waste into, which we should do, businesses, etc., we need really to get the quality thing right. We can't go through 5 or 6 years of learning to get to that process. And I put the other ones in just to illustrate the sort of materials that we're given and the sort of waste we're given. And I thought, I've done this a couple of times, but I thought, so what do we mean by contamination? Because the percentages sometimes mask things. So I said, okay, if we put ourselves a target of 0.2% contamination in feedstock, so what does that mean? It sounds fairly low. Well, it kind of equates, and it was a bit of an accident I got to this, is 1 crisp packet per 2 kilogram of caddy. So you only need one person in the family to put 1 crisp packet in a 2 kilogram caddy, and that's 0.2% contamination. It doesn't sound like contamination, but if you prorata that out, it's 500 packs per ton. And 500 packs per ton, thankfully, because I found a website that allowed me to measure them, is equivalent, if you laid them side by side, 10 meters squared of crisp packets on the farmland. Now, 0.2% sounds good, but if I laid out 10 square meters of crisp packets on the farmland and said that's acceptable, I suspect that no one will say that's acceptable. And however well we do the cleanup at the front end of our plants, we can't achieve that on our own. So we've really got to get this thing sorted in terms of getting only organics into the bin in the first place. And there'll be occasional bits of contamination that we'll take out. Well, we can't allow contamination in, and we can't allow a flux of contamination while we take a whole new population that, certainly in England, aren't used to food waste collections, from the takeaway to the licensed restaurant, etc. Go through the process of them learning that contamination is bad. And contamination costs. We've really got to sort that one out. And I've sat with DEFRA. Nina's heard me shouting and screaming and wriggling and scrawling about the process. It's fundamental to get this right, because if we lose the confidence of farmers and we lose the fight on contamination, it's going to be a real struggle to get it back. So we really need to get this right, and we need to get it right before we put mandatory food in. We have 2 years to get this right, to get the standards right, to get the methods right, the communications right, and everything else, to make sure that we don't ruin it. Last slide for me, please. So as that appears. So what we should do, well, minimization is the first one. I'll go back to my slides. Should we really throwing away all those salad potatoes, or should we be eating them? Because that means we need less material to go onto the land to grow new crops to replace them. Really got to sort out contamination at the front end. We want to really get down to the smallest amount of contamination we have to deal with at the plant. So although we can do a lot of work with contamination, what we're looking at in terms of levels of contamination really requires a system change in all that process. We kind of need to sort out, I'm quite worried about land bank and liquids and climate change and the ability to get liquids away in parts of the year when we have different weather patterns, we have a lot more rain, soil moisture might not be there. So we need to really think about that, whether it's dry AD or wet AD or compost or IVC. It's more than that. And it comes back into the ammonia question that Nina raised as well. We should be looking at ourselves on a carbon basis, and we should be valuing the products on the carbon basis in what they do. So that's what they add and what they avoid in other things. At 15 to 50 pound a tonne of carbon value, then we start to see that there is something that we need to do to get that, and there should be a level playing field, and we can see what incentives do. So if we start to get the carbon value flowing back through the process, it's no different from those who are old enough, the RO and then the RHI and the FITs that grew the AD to electricity market, and RHI grew the gas to grid market. So we know we can do it if we create the right system, but we've got to get the whole focus working. There's no point in having lots of AD plants that can't get rid of their digestate because it's contaminated. There's no point loading too much cost at one part of the system because we haven't properly accounted for the value in the products. So we need to step back, stop looking at this as waste managers and look at this as environmental custodians. Thank you. Put me crystal ball away now.
Thank you, Stuart. Always deep, always broad. That's what we asked for. Some real great insights there. Question for you quickly. I want to get into some poll stuff though. What level of policy certainty in relation to end markets is needed to make the organic sector more investable for companies like Suez?
We need the value chain understood. So I think Nina was with it 4 or 5 years ago. There's a biowaste forum discussion, and we'd spent a long time looking at land bank. There's lots of different parts of the system need access to land bank, sewage, sludge, etc. We really need to sit down and go look across all the people that need access to land and go, okay, what are we going to do? And then we come up with a finite amount. We understand what that looks like, and then we start to design the system from the back end of getting materials away. We then need to put the right solutions in place in the middle. And then we need to get people to understand that if you avoid food waste in the first instance, but if you then protect the food waste that you do produce so that it can be positively used and get them really engaged in the process. And we've seen that they can be engaged. They've been engaged through COVID in many different ways. And I think climate change is just a bigger, more long-term crisis that we have to deal with, and we really need to bring these things and say, actually, it's there. So it's a whole sector approach, and I'm Nina's been really nice and asked me to help her out a little bit on sitting on the Organics Roadshow, and I think that the key part of us getting that sorted and getting it done. I rant at Charlie at the OIG as well occasionally, as he rants at me, but we need to stop ranting and start doing.
Good. So let's get a poll question for the audience, please. Let's get the audience back involved. Let's see what they're thinking, because I think this is going to stimulate the last 15 minutes of discussion with the panel. So get your digits ready so you can vote. Let's pull it up. Is free garden waste collection compatible with the decarbonisation agenda? So Stuart's mentioned it. Well, I think Wendy's mentioned it. I think both Charlie and Nina alluded to this. But I mean, you know, decarbonisation is the game in town at the moment. So free garden waste collections compatible? Yes, no, or I'm undecided. I'll count you down, but don't take long, because I've got 4 questions to ask, and we want to get some discussion around these. So let's get your digits working hard, please. 5, 4, you know what comes next. 3, 2, 1. Close. So scores on the doors. Stuart, 59% say a free garden waste collection is compatible with the decarbonisation agenda. How do you feel?
Absolutely. The only contention is in the question that I think accessing the renewable materials from households in green waste is absolutely in line with the decarbonised agenda. We just need to do it better.
And Wendy, the 30% that said no?
Yeah, I'm edging towards the no vote, to be honest, because I'm a firm believer in home composting and making the use of the home compost in the garden that generated it. So for me, having a free garden waste collection is just going to put more waste into the overall system than needs managing.
Okay, so some split thinking. Charlie, just from your perspective, is there anything on that? Was that an unexpected response from an audience, or is that kind of where you thought the issue was?
So I think it's why I said about the 6 terawatt hours. That's what I mean. I accept the point. You should compost at home if you can produce a lot, but again, I suppose I'd argue more for those commingled green food together, and you get all that energy. And I have to say, much as I'm a fan of open air windrow compost and all that kind of stuff, and it's appropriate in certain places, but we just don't capture that energy. Okay,
well, that leads me into my second poll question. So what is the best solution for household green waste in carbon terms? I'm talking household green waste this time. So with Wendy and Charlie both alluded to some of the options here. Should you pave your garden? Home composting, waste prevention, collection for composting, collection for dry AD, and I think Charlie's made a strong argument for that. Or is it something else? And if it's something else, then use your question box and send me in 1 or 2 words only what that something else might be, because then I can reflect that when I'm talking to the panel in about 30 seconds. So there you go. Should you pave your garden? Should we have more home composting? Is it collection for composting? Is it collection for dry AD? Or is it something else? 5, come on, you can vote quicker than that, please. 4, 3, 2. I'm going to come to Wendy first, because you've already made your position clear on this one. 2, 1, and we've got a good level of voting. So here we go. Scores on the doors. 48% home composting, 29% collection for composting, 24% collection for dry AD. Nobody came up with a new winning solution, unfortunately. What do you think, Wendy? Is that in line with how you see the world? It sounds like
Well,
it.
I'm glad that no one wants to pave their garden, so that's good news. But yeah, I mean, I would agree, as I've always said, with the home composting. Interesting in terms of Charlie's thoughts about the dry AD and government current policy of a separate weekly food waste collection and a sort of free separate garden waste collection. So I'm not sure how that's compatible with government's current thinking.
What do you think on that response? Stuart, sorry.
Sorry. Charlie looked like he wanted to react.
Charlie's after you. Don't worry, I've got him in my eye line.
I think home composting is a good solution for those that have a use for the compost. I must say, for my garden, which is more industrial for kids and dogs, I wouldn't have a use for compost. So I think that there's not necessarily one solution for all in that process, which I think is fine through that process. And I think probably the same for food. I think we'll have lots of separate food collection because you don't have garden waste. But having looked at dry ADs and food and green together, if you can slow down the collections, so I have a commingled food and green and I get a 2 weekly collection. That's one less truck a week that's visiting my house. There's some balance in there as well. So I think actually they all have a route and you just got to pick a local solution that fits with the local need.
And Charlie, we talk about extended producer responsibility for packaging and stuff, but I'm just wondering, is the food situation one where we should be thinking about a different way of charging? Because people that produce a load of it because they're inefficient or on the go or whatever, are we making it too easy? I mean, I don't think, free collections is probably going to generate a lot of material, but if we start charging too much, then people, there's the issue of, are they going to put it somewhere else? Wrong bin, neighbour's bin, etc. I mean, is there a taxation opportunity in here, or is that going to be too complicated and too unpolitically friendly, shall we say?
Well, on food waste, yeah. I mean, I think. Well, I think that the data we said before, we are seeing food waste reducing. It should reduce further. I think I'd always be a politician going back to the home composting. So home composting is great, and if you can do it, do it. People have. I mean, actually, now we have a small garden. I don't have room for any composting. I have no grass, but I have a crown full of plants. So I'm very lucky that currently we have a free green and food mixed together. But there's no one solution, and I think as Stuart said, I'm a firm believer in both wet AD and dry AD, and indeed both in their windrow composting. I think it's a question of, if we're going to look at societal change, if we're going to look at overall society benefit and doing the right thing from a climate point of view, then we do need to do things differently. And energy, from a pure energy point of view, if you can do fortnightly collections where it's possible, where it works with a local authority, and local authorities know best. I think it's what Wendy's alluding to. Local authorities know how best to manage waste in their particular area. So there's definitely no one size fits all, but a combination of these things. But I would keep reiterating, unless we focus on the quality, and as Stuart very eloquently put it, it's a whole systems approach to do the right thing.
Okay, 2 more questions coming, audience. So this is just, you've got to work hard for about another 30 seconds, a minute tops. So, is contamination of the organic stream a failure of, and of course I'm only letting you pick one because we don't want to give you the easy answer. Is it the manufacturer? Is it the consumer? Is it the collector? Is it the treater or reprocessor? Or is it the end market? Where would you lay the blame in terms of contamination arising in the system? Is it because of manufacturers and what they're putting on the market? Is it because of consumers and the choices that they make? Is it because of the way that we collect and that creates a problem? Is it the way that we reprocess, or because we're designed for landfill avoidance rather than quality production? Or is it just simply because the end market isn't engaged with the rest of the system? I suppose I'm helping you a little bit. I'm going to count you down quickly because time is precious and I want to get through this. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Nina, what do you think the answer is?
I don't think that's a straightforward one at all, Adam. Pointing the finger of blame is always a difficult thing to do, and I think there's issues at certainly the last 4 of those. The manufacturer, unless we're
15%
talking
the
about
manufacturer.
use of PE rather than, yeah. I wonder what they're thinking there. It must be, in my head, something between the polyethylene and liners, but 85% saying it's the consumer's fault. Really,
Yeah.
That's an interesting answer, isn't it?
It is.
Is that the lack of education, though? Is it the?
You're right. I mean, I think all the speakers have alluded to engagement, understanding, appreciation, decisions. I mean, Stuart, you're a systems man. Were you expecting such a strong response?
It was stronger than I thought. I thought it'd be more of a spread around some of the others, but I think in terms of manufacturer, I think that's related to the material that are being produced that go into that. I was looking at a plastic bag that my wife had put some vegetables in that said it was compostable, but it looked like a plastic bag, and you had to read it quite carefully to understand what it was and where to put it. But it looks like plastic, so the first reaction was to put it in the plastics. So I think the manufacturing bit does that. There you go, that's Monty saying hello to you all. And then I think in terms of informing the consumer and helping them out is all of our responsibilities. So I think in terms of if you're going to roll out food waste collections for businesses, we can't just turn up one day and tell them they've got to have a bin and do nothing about it. And that's government, our sector, local authorities, and lots of other people have got to get in there and give them the right advice, understand what looks good, and provide something that's simple and convenient. So I think the only thing that poll didn't do for me is just spread some of that responsibility across the whole value chain, which I think we all have.
Fair point. Polls are always simplistic, as a couple of the audience have been pointing out to me. That's too simplistic, Adam. That's not how the real world works. Well, it's a poll. I'm sorry. We need to, generate some discussion. Right. Final poll question, audience. Last time to vote. Going to keep it simple, and then I'm going to ask each of our panelists to comment on the poll response, but also then to give me, their soundbite, their one sentence takeaway that we should be thinking about over the next 6 to 12 months. Okay. So I've warned you. Right, here we go. Last poll question, audience. Rock and roll. Is the organic value chain aligned sufficiently to deliver the step change that all of our panelists have alluded to today in terms of collections, treatment, end market, and most importantly, quality, not quantity, as part of our systemic change? So yes, the value chain is definitely aligned sufficiently. Yes, it's aligned to some degree, work to be done. We're uncertain. That's a difficult question, Adam. Or no, definitely not. They haven't got a Scooby-Doo.
Wow.
And I'm going to count you down rapidly. And remember, panelists, I'm wanting that soundbite takeaway message. What's going to happen in the next 6 to 12 months? What are you looking forward to? And the answers on the doors: 5, 4, 3. And I'm going to go down in order. 3, 2, 1. Vote is closed. And Charlie, you've been tasked with one sentence only by a certain audience member who shan't be named.
That's impossible.
Yes, definitely 0%. Yes, to some degree 23%, uncertain 32%, and no, definitely not 45%. So I'm going to start with Nina, because that suggests your roadmap needs a lot of work. Have you got the right people around the table, and is it going to be as inclusive as we need it to be?
It does, doesn't it, Rob? It definitely raises that question, Adam. And in terms of answering your question, I think we've got the start of the right people around the table. Once we've got a draft, we'll make sure we've absolutely got the right people around the table. So your soundbite is we need the roadmap. We need to understand what success looks like for us in the next 6 months. Because as Stuart says, if we don't get it right, and we get mandatory food waste collection and changes coming through policy in the next 2 years, we won't survive. So we need to get it right.
I'm with you. Charlie. So comment on that poll, and then I'll put it back if you want to see it again, so you can.
Yeah, no, that.
What's your takeaway message?
I think I agree. I think my takeaway message has just got to be: we've just got to get the outputs right. That's a very simple comment.
Blimey, don't say anything else, mate. That's perfect. Wendy.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by the outcome of the poll, to be honest. But I think the roadmap gives hope, and I think we just need to talk more.
That's why these webinars are so good. A little soundbite, a little bit of chit chat, a bit of banter, and hopefully one of the audience members is going to walk away and do something really impressive, or reach out to Nina and say, I want to be on that roadmap panel. Let me in. Stuart, the final word is with you.
So I'm looking forward to A, the policies, B, Carbon Budget 6, because I think that will start to explain how our sector will work. BAYS and CCS, because I think there'll be an element in there that should be dealing with us in the organic sector, so I think that works. And especially looking forward to the organics roadmap.
Thank you. Well, we've run over by 1 minute, but the panel was so good, and Charlie just talks, and I quite enjoy it. So why wouldn't you let it run for a bit longer? Listen, audience, you've been fantastic. You've answered all our questions, even the ones that were too simplistic. Thank you for taking part. I've asked some of your questions. I couldn't ask them all. We just don't have enough time in an hour, but today was one of those hour sprints, not a 90-minute deep dive. We will share those questions after the event, though, don't worry. So you can follow up with the speakers, or they will follow up with you. I'd like to thank the panel. They've been fantastic. So much insight, so much positivism. Is that a word? Who knows? But pragmatic, realizing there's issues to be resolved, and together we can do it. So I heard collaboration, I heard momentum, I heard quality, I heard systemic change. I like all those words. It sounds like an exciting time to be in the organic sector. So again, a big thank you to the panel, Charlie, Wendy, Stuart, and Nina. It's thanks from me. Thank you from Suez, and thank you to the audience. Look forward to seeing you at a webinar, or maybe even a round table in person sometime soon. Enjoy the rest of the lockdown, and have a good afternoon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. There we go.